Miss Mercedes Terrell, how are you?
I'm great, Eddie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking out the time to join me. You are Bellator MMA's premier ring girl, as well as an accomplished model actress. And now you have your own podcast called The MAJic Hour, which is
I
available on
do.
iTunes. How are things?
It's so good. This is just a really fun time, I think. Yeah, I've been with Bellator now for, oh my God, like 10, I'm coming up on 10 years, I think. And
Wow.
that's been amazing. Still is amazing. Still going strong.
How did that relationship come to be? A decade. That's pretty
10
impressive.
years. I know. You mean, how did I start in the game in the first place?
Yeah.
I won. I don't know I guess to describe it is they had a contest for ring girls, sent in a video last minute, and on the request of my modeling manager at the time. And then I ended up, making it or whatever. Got an interview with the CEO at who the CEO was at the time, Bjorn Redney, and they had me be their very first ring girl. So now I'm the veteran.
The veteran. Now, so I guess you have a contract with them or whatnot. Has any other
Mhm.
promotions tried to steal you away at all?
Um, I would say that, let me put it this way. I am a very loyal human being all around, and that comes in play with my business relationships as well. So whether it be with Bellator or any of the other companies I've worked for in the past, I feel like when they treat you right, you should do the same. So I've respected that relationship in that regard.
I respect it. Are you a martial
Yeah.
artist yourself? Do you train in the arts or anything like that?
No, I mean, I have trained a teensy tiny bit of Muay Thai and a little bit of Jiu-Jitsu in the past, but just for workout, getting my fitness on purposes, not for trying to go into the cage at all. And no, I wouldn't call myself a martial artist, but I definitely
Okay.
am a big fan of MMA.
I'm sure you get that question a lot, whether or not you would actually step in there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely respect all that goes into training for that and the reasons behind people wanting to do that. I just don't like getting hit.
That's
I just don't know
reasonable.
that. Yeah, at this point in my life, I don't. I haven't come to the conclusion that I want to be, in the cage and being that aggressively close to another human being. I don't think I'm going to in the anytime in the near future, and I'll age out of being able to step into the cage. So I don't think in my lifetime I'm going to be an MMA fighter. You could put that to rest.
Fair enough. Well, what would you say is like your favorite part of being a ring girl? Like, is it the lifestyle? Is it I mean, what would you say is probably number one in terms of why you do what you do?
Number one, in terms of why to be a ring girl, if anyone listening wanted to think about doing that as a career, I would say um, sitting cage side, you have to like what you're watching. So whatever, promotional modeling you're going to do, like spent a long time on the Supercross tour with Monster Energy, and as Miss Supercross for a while there. And that was because I loved that sport. Like I grew up out in the desert riding on all kinds of toys out there. And so being around dirt bikes and that whole scene was really already in my blood. And then when it came to MMA, it's such a just captivating sport generally that was an easy choice, and I was really attracted to that whole scene. And then once I got into the industry, mixed martial arts industry, and being around all the people that are involved and being around my family at Bellator, it really grew into a family. It grew into something that meant more to me than just a job. And here I am, like I said, 10 years later, where I've been on this ride and seen, the world with Bellator. Like literally, they've taken me around the world. I've sat cage side at amazing fights over and over and over again, met all kinds of people that I wouldn't have had the chance to, except I am doing this job, so I do get to. So I'd say that the things that sit on the top of the list of why being a ring girl is awesome is cage side seats at all the biggest fights. So if you're a fan, then it's great. If you're not a fan, it's probably wasted on you. And then
Right.
meeting the people that came along with it, whether it be the other fans of MMA or the people I got to work with or am working with currently.
What's the least favorite thing about the job? Having to constantly curve fans left and right that are obnoxious?
No, I mean, curving fans, like, that sounds so ridiculous. Like, yeah, I hate when people hit on me. I hate when people, whistle at me. No, not at all. I mean, I think that that's kind of part of the job. Obviously, when it gets to a point where it's degrading, or when there's some drunken fans or something like that, where they're just being overly aggressive or something like that, then yeah, that's not a space that I like to hang out in, for sure. So I'd say that that's probably the least favorite thing, is when people get too aggressive, because they're, not sober. Yeah.
Sipping the sauce.
And other than that, it's the travel, like being actually at the place and exploring wherever we're having the fight at is awesome. But getting there, like the hours you spend sitting in an airport and sitting in an airplane or being delayed, and, all those things that come along with actually getting to the place where we're going to have this event for each fight week, is probably my other least favorite thing. No one wants to sit in a stinky airplane.
Yeah, I mean, your schedule is pretty demanding. I mean, you have to travel everywhere around the world, and sometimes Bellator has back-to-back events like we had this past weekend, plus everything else you're doing in the podcast. How do you, and like people, they see you traveling all over and they think it's glamorous, which there is a lot of glamour to it, but they don't see the hard work that goes into it, and having to sit in airports and layovers and waiting and hauling luggage around and all that. But like, how do you manage the workload that really goes into it all?
Just being grateful. I think like gratitude can help you manage just about anything in life. So just anytime you're struggling, I try to reframe my mind. Like, okay, yeah, I'm having a bad day because 2 of my flights got canceled and I've been sitting in this airport for 17 hours or whatever the thing is. In that moment, it's like ridiculous to be super bummed out, because think about what else I could be doing. I could be at a desk job and hating my life. I could be I'm literally on the way to something I love doing. I feel like in every way, shape, and form right now, I am either living my bliss or on course to fulfilling that completely. So, just being grateful. I think that practice of gratitude is what's brought me to this point. Like, I really do. I think that manifests everything you want in life. If you can just sit back and be like, take it all in and realize the reasons that you're grateful for it. Even the darkest places, even the shittiest things that you're going to go through, in those moments, if you can, like, for just a split second, take, I guess, a zoom out and have a different perspective, or a wider perspective of the fact that this dark place or this hard spot is exactly what's going to get you to the next amazing spot. And by going through whatever that ugly place is, you're going to learn something that's going to allow you to see the light on the other side.
There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, that perspective can help prevent people from quitting and giving up on their dreams. It kind of, let you know that if you keep that positive mindset and you don't let that resistance creep in, you're more than likely to reach whatever goal you may have set for yourself. So I dig that. There's definitely a lot of truth to that. What'd you think of the doubleheader this past weekend? I know a lot of the fights didn't pan out the way we thought they were going to pan out. I'm just curious as to your take on the weekend.
Yeah, I was. Doubleheader's always you always know you're going to get something good out of that. There's a lot of fights on that card, the 2 cards combined. But, and we did, but definitely, like you said, a lot of things that I didn't see coming. I'd say I was looking most forward to MVP Daly, of course, and I would not have predicted I would have predicted that MVP would win, but I didn't predict the way that would go down. I just felt like he wasn't on his game the way that he usually is, and which is awesome. I mean, it's cool to see for Daly that he really gave him a serious struggle, and it makes it interesting for us to see them in the cage again sometime, hopefully. So,
but Daly shooting takedowns made it weird, right?
Like there was a lot of weird things going on in that fight. I feel like it just wasn't like we all came to see this spectacular moment happen, and it just didn't happen. Like it just didn't happen that way. So it's tough too when it's a big fight like that. There's so much invested by the fighters. There's so much at stake. And especially because those two guys had so much beef, previously, that there's so much at stake. It's, I wouldn't say those guys were trying to play it safe that night. I would say nothing was going to plan. They were both pretty prepared for each other. And sometimes that makes a fight less exciting, which is funny.
Yeah, they were definitely trying to advance in the tournament. You got to understand the mindset. Daly trying to be the veteran, doing what veterans do, and it just kind of produced a dud. And that's nothing. That's not even Bellator's fault. Like, they booked great back-to-back main events, but this is MMA where anything can happen, so you never really know what you're going to get.
You never know.
But you did say you predicted MVP winning. How is Mercedes' prediction percentage? Are you pretty good at picking the outcomes?
No, because I pick them by how much I like the people. Like, if I know the guy and I know he's a really decent person, then I'm going to put my energy towards him while he's fighting. But no, I don't usually make predictions. We got to keep it politically correct over there. So for the most part, I try to stay out of that. Of course, like I said, if one of them's my homie, then I'm going to be rooting for him, sideline rooting.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I believe Patricio Pitbull might be fighting Michael Chandler here soon. You got a dog in that race?
That's a really tough one because those two guys have grown up with me in Bellator. Like, we've kind of all been in this together for a long, long time. So both amazing fighters. Michael Chandler, I think he's just super entertaining, and he's a beast. And Pitbull too. So I don't know. I don't know if I can call that one. That's a really tough one. I know I've spent more time with Chandler, so I'll probably be rooting on his side. But honestly, both those guys are that's a hard one to call. How about you?
Oh, man. It's hard for me to pick against Chandler in that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll probably go with Chandler also. He is just operating on a crazy level. And
dude, his social media right now, I'm like, you are a beast, bro. Like,
his workouts. It's insane. It's like, how is this even humanly possible?
Exactly.
But it's great.
Superhuman.
And Patricio's moving up in weight, so he'll be giving up some size. And you don't want to give up size to a wrestler, so I think
that's true. Good point.
I'll probably go with Chandler on that one. But so you've started a podcast, the MAJic Hour podcast. And this is with former Bellator ring girl Jade Bryce, and that's MAJic spelled MAJic. Is that for Mercedes and Jade, or why is it spelled that way? Is that why?
So perceptive, yes. Yeah, Mercedes and Jade. The MAJic Hour. We're pretty stoked about it. It's like I said, man, this is just a little piece of my living bliss. So I know it's so new agey that term bliss is being used and thrown around way too much, but it's the best way I have to describe that piece of my life right now is I'm just feel really in alignment with what I need to be doing right now. And the podcast feels like a serious expression of, again, too many new agey terms in a row, but my most authentic self. And I just feel super good about it. I feel stoked that people are actually listening, which is like, the first little hurdle to get over. So seeing people come and participate and listen and then tell us, like, when we see them in person or whether that's, on our reviews or on the comments in our social feed, that they heard something one of our guests said, or one of the, what we call magic tricks we gave during one of the episodes, they used it and implemented it in their lives, and their life is changing for the better. And that's kind of our whole goal is, letting people know they're not alone. And especially if they're seeking, that they will find what they're looking for if they implement tools toward that. And so in the podcast, we try to give as many of those tools and tricks and, bring on guests that can give the same really valuable advice so that people can become their highest selves, so to speak.
I dig it. Yeah, and I mean, I've watched a couple episodes. It seems like it is just a life podcast where you never know what you're going to get, but you can almost guarantee that it's going to be some sort of betterment, regardless of who it's coming from. And I like Jimmy Smith on there. He's a pretty cool guy. Yeah. So watching him on there was pretty cool. He said a lot of funny stories between y'all.
And I mean, Jimmy and Jade and I all, of course, know each other super well, from being in Bellator together for so long. But Jimmy on that episode really allowed us to ask him questions that nobody talks about with that dude. Nobody knows those things about Jimmy and his past and his father. And like, we've got into the deepest, darkest stuff with him. And all the guests that we have on, we actually preface the interviews by saying, hey, let's go into this interview like we're best friends and we're just in a little huddle around a couple glasses of wine or whatever, and we're having just an intimate conversation. Go as deep and dark as you want, or whatever direction you want to go. We'll pull out anything you want to pull out after the interview's over, or when we go to post this thing. And everyone has dived as deep as we've asked them to with our questions. And no one's ever asked us to pull anything out. So it's been really amazing that people are willing to open up in that way. It's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. I mean, what's more important than being your true self, What is it? There's that saying, no one's more you than you. So
I don't think that everyone feels that way at all times in their life. I think it takes like a certain amount of, time spent on this planet to come to a point where you feel like you can be that vulnerable without, worrying about the judgment that comes with that, or that you can express these things about your character that you might have thought you needed to hide for whatever reasons, whatever things that you got brought up with, whatever society is telling you, whatever. And we're trying to give a safe space to let that stuff come out so other people can relate and hopefully better themselves the same way that the people on our the people we have on the show have as well. So, and we're by the way, we're like Jade and I, when I say we, Jade and I are actively practicing the things that we discuss on the podcast. And I think that's kind of the coolest part is you can do it along with us because we talk about how we're trying this thing or implementing this new thing. And we're all just trying to evolve into, whatever the best human we can be. We stumble a lot. We talk about all the fuck ups. And when it comes to our guests, we're trying to take in and soak up any information they have to give us as well and implement that into our lives, Jade and my lives as well. So we kind of get to go through all that together with our listeners, and it's pretty damn cool. They send in, we have our audience send in questions for whoever we're having on the podcast or for Jade and I, or just topics that they want to discuss. So a lot of that content comes from the people listening, which is cool because we're actually, in some sense, giving them back what they're asking for. So.
And is this just you and Jade? Like, do you guys do all the editing yourself and the whole shebang? Is that all in-house?
We have a producer, Adam Sheridan. He's amazing, but basically because we want to be so hands-on, and I think right now in the space that the podcast is working in, being really like intimate with the following and being really one-on-one with everyone who's involved or participating or, wanting to be seen and heard, which I think is everybody in the world, but the people that are listening and trying to have that connection with us, we do take it on ourselves. So Jada and I basically go through and pull everything we do or don't want in the show. It's a lot of work. Let me put it to you this way. This podcast started out like, oh, this could be a cool hobby. And now it's like the biggest job of my every single day, and Jade's too. It is a full-time deal where we are, yes, editing and re-editing and listening 1,000 times, and which is also amazing, by the way, because by the time that after the podcast gets recorded, and then by the time it actually gets released, we've edited it or listened to it in order to edit it, like, I don't know, 7 times each, Jade and I. That's just probably an average number. And through that, we've listened to what this interview is talking about, what actually gets said. So in a way, it's a positive too. We get to absorb it. Yeah, like we're just surrounding ourselves with the stuff we're putting out there. So that's kind of cool. It like forces us to actively use it.
That's kind of how I feel when I transcribe interviews, because I have to listen to it over and over, and I type it and I just really retain the information. It kind of,
that's a good practice too. Like writing anything down, I feel like really sinks it in.
Oh, I'm a to-do list person. If I don't write it down, it's probably not getting done.
Exactly.
That's just how
it works.
And
if it's like, I have certain lists, like I have the one that's in my calendar. If it gets put on the calendar, it has to get done in that day. So there only can be like 4 big things, you know?
Right.
And then the to-do list is like, you got to put like emojis, like this one today, you know?
You got to prioritize. That's for sure.
I've got list on list on list. I got to get like a list for my list, I think, at this point.
And editing is such a thankless job because if you do it right, no one notices. They're like, oh, here's his finished product.
Take that for granted.
Yeah. So much goes into creating things and just building, but it's art. You know, it's your
Absolutely.
art. So it's definitely cool.
And I think today, like of any time that's ever been on this, you know, little spinning blue dot we got going on here, I think being able to and open to, and I'm saying as a species, I think we have the advantage today over any other time of human existence that we get to be these as vulnerable as we've ever been able to, or as far as I know, right now we are coming back towards this direction of being our truest selves, like trying to actually attain authenticity, whatever that means to you, and strip away the stuff that is clouding your everyday world, you know, like the stuff that just doesn't serve you, the stuff that doesn't matter, and the stuff that isn't going to help you further yourself or reach the goals that you want to reach. And I live in that world with the podcast, but
I call that unsubscribing from society.
In a way it's unsubscribing from society, but don't you think that society is also so much in need of the transition? So if we completely pull ourselves out, we don't serve the whole. Does that make sense?
I feel like once you unsubscribe, you then put yourself in a position to where you can influence. And then once you're influencing, it's almost like the gift that keeps on giving. You influence someone and they influence someone. And then after a while, hopefully it elevates everyone and everyone's more woke, I guess, as the kids say.
Yeah, exactly. I know I hate using the words too, but sometimes you got it because that's what we have. I think the same thing I'm describing with when I say sacred space or, you know, making space. The same thing as you're saying as unsubscribing from society is pulling yourself out of the humdrum buzz of whatever pollutes your mind on a daily basis and finding space enough to like think about the things that actually freaking matter, that are actually going to move you towards your goals and manifest your own, you know, whatever your ideal destiny is. So, yeah.
Well, what's next for the podcast, the MAJic Hour? What do you have coming up in store?
Oh my God. So we have, first of all, it's every Wednesday we launch a new episode. So you can always check that out on anywhere you can get your podcast, on the podcast app, iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff. We have amazing guests coming up. We've already recorded, 30 plus podcasts. Because I tour so much with Bellator, I knew I had to stockpile a ton. So we just spent the last 2 months, almost every day recording, which has been heavy, difficult, hard. And then think about all the editing that comes with that. So yeah, it's a lot. You know, Eddie, you know. But what's coming up that I'm nervous just talking about it right now is our live South by Southwest event where we are going to record with 3 different guests live in front of an audience. It's not going to air live because we're going to have, put a bunch of other beautifying techniques on the podcast before they air. But at the event, we're going to have each of our guests lead us in different movement-based things. So whatever they're into, which the event itself is called Move with MAJic. It's at On It Gym in Austin, Texas. During South by Southwest. It's actually going to be on March 10th. If anyone is going to be in the area, please join us. You can look at the MAJic Hour on Instagram, find us on Facebook, any of those things, and follow the links through to the event page where you can buy tickets and all that. We're also, with that event, we are fundraising. All the proceeds are going to Safe Austin, which is a big charity in Austin that helps people that have been victims of sex trafficking, children in abusive households, that type of thing. So that's all amazing. And if you are ready to like set your ego aside for the day and be a part of something that's going to definitely alter your being, then I would say join us. I'm super nervous for all of it. You can sit there and watch me sweat bullets as I interview these people live. And then also we're going to be participating in the movement. So our guests are Melody Afkami. She's a dance instructor, but her dance isn't just like any kind of dance. It's like high energy, choreographed dance, which by the way, none of us attending, I'm sure, will know the choreography. So we'll just be, you know, you got, like I said, you got to put your ego aside and just fucking jump in and see how it goes. And then we're going to have Aaron Alexander, who is the guy from Align podcast, if you listen there. He's a big friend of the whole On It crew as well. He is going to lead us in some articulated stretching. I think he's going to do some breath work. So he's really big on movement. That's his whole deal. He'll, I'm sure, have some really interesting stuff to say. I've been listening a lot to him to write out his outline, and I'm already like changing my life in accordance with some of the things he recommends. So I think that'll be good. And then Parangi is our, I guess we'll call him our headliner. He is this amazing musician who plays all the instruments I don't even know the names of, like the didgeridoo, this, you know, flute, all these instruments from around the world. And we're going to have a full ecstatic dance ceremony with him. That's going to, like, from what I've heard, I haven't done this before. This will be my first time too, but I've heard that his ecstatic dance ceremony is literally more life-changing than doing like an ayahuasca ceremony.
Really?
Okay. Yes, should be interesting.
Looking forward to that. Do you have any sponsors or like people you'd like to give a special shout out to that are kind of helping you along this journey?
No, actually not yet. Right now it's just Jade and I and our producer, and we are making it. We are, of course, always open to sponsors. So maybe if someone's listening to this, they can go listen and see if it's something they want to support with us. Yeah, we're going to be on this train for a while. We're committed.
I dig it. Well, Miss Mercedes Terrell, thank you so much for taking out the time. We can see you brightening up all the Bellator events as their premier ring girl, as well as hosting the MAJic Hour podcast, available everywhere you can get your podcast. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors, and we'll catch up soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks.